This is Patriots Playbook.
Is it my turn to talk now?
Here's your host of Patriots Playbook, John Rook.
Bad ass.
The legend.
Should we lead off today with what we're going to do about our show opens, Marine? Do we lead off with that today? I think that we have winners in each of the brackets that he sent out last week, and so I think he's going to retweet those out. What, today, tomorrow, something like that, to vote on the two winners, and then we'll debut the winner next Wednesday. Does that sound right?
I will get them loaded up in just 5 minutes.
Okay, all right. So if you don't know what we're talking about, Matt's, he's got a big assist this year from AI. But it's his creativity with the lyrics and the music and the theme and all that stuff that we're developing these bright, spanking, brand new, hip, hip show opens for our show and for PU and for Catch 22 and all the other stuff that we do around here. And
love it.
And so we decided we were going to throw it out to the fans, to our listeners, to vote on their favorites. And so we'll take the two finalists from last week's preliminaries and throw them back up on social media. You get a chance to listen to them, and then we'll go from there. So something fun. It's a fun aspect of this one. Speaking of fun, the football game was fun on Sunday. It was fun.
That was
because
your kind of football game.
Well, yeah, because it was Smashmouth. It was defensive oriented. It was no mistakes or few mistakes. I mean, they played close to the irony, and I kept thinking this throughout the entire game. The irony was they played it exactly as Bill Belichick would have chalked it up.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it. I think it's the formula that they've tried to get to over the last couple of years, and at times, certainly during the 2021 and 2022 seasons, they were able to check those boxes. But last year, obviously, they weren't because of the offense and the turnovers, mainly on offense, that were just catastrophic. So if we've given a lot of flowers to them for winning on Sunday, and rightfully I understand it. But at the same time, now that we're on Wednesday and they're back out at practice and we're turning the page to Seattle, to me, it becomes more a conversation of, okay, well, what now? Nice win.
Where do you go from here? What's the step?
Right.
And I think we realize the biggest thing on my mind in trying to take the next step or continue the momentum of whatever you want to term it is that, all right, we have to figure out what really needs to be worked on first. And I think we saw that there are certainly some needs on this team because they're not going to win 6, 7, 10, 16, whatever you want. They're not going to win a number of games playing exactly the way they played last week. And I think that's a common misnomer here. Oh, let's just run the ball and play good defense and we'll win 7 or 8 games. We'll be right there at the end. Well, no, because somebody's got to catch the ball, and not everybody's going to be healthy all year long, and different opponents are going to present different issues, maybe with the exception of Seattle, because as we talk about it here over the next few minutes, I kind of look at the Seahawks, and I'm thinking, they remind me of the Patriots a little bit.
Yeah, it's a good point about the path to winning, or the winning formula, if you want to call it that. So I looked it up over the last 2 years. I looked up quarterbacks that threw 20 or more passes in a game, but under 125 yards. So basically, Jacoby Brissett's stats from that game. Yeah. There were 34 instances of that happening over the last 2 seasons. The record for those 34 teams, 8-26.
Gee, many Christmas.
So you're winning about 25% of the time.
And you got to do a little better than that. Now, winning 25% of the time is about what people expected of this team.
Right. But if you're going to look at this, and this is the big thing that I would just maybe cautiously, not in a mean way, just push back on a little bit from what I've heard, because I think there's a lot of flowers going out to the Patriots right now, because I think a lot of people thought that they were going to be a disaster in Cincinnati on Sunday. Penalties, turnovers, not lining up correctly offensively, and it was a clean game.
Especially Del Pettis on the first snap of the football game, and he moves on the kickoff.
Right, so now you're expecting what we saw in Washington.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was a much cleaner operation than anything we had seen the Patriots put together to date. And they deserve credit for that. But the stat I just mentioned, that is the norm, is if your quarterback is only going to throw for 121 yards in the NFL nowadays, you are losing the majority of those games, the vast majority of those games. So the two things that I look at in order to, really 3, But I don't know if the third one is really going to happen. I don't know if two of them are really going to happen, but the third one for sure. The first one is the Patriots allowed the highest pressure rate in the NFL in Week 1. 48% pressure rate on Jacoby Brissett. That is not sustainable, and that is not going to be good enough moving forward. You can't have a functional drop-back passing game when he's under pressure half the time. It's just not going to yield great results. The second thing, which is even bigger to me, because I don't know if they're going to fix the offensive line. So that's one of the things I'm not 100% sure can be fixed. The lack of production off of play action, I think, is really big. Because if you're going to run for 170, you can't scheme up some play action shots off of the run game that's working. So they only had 26 passing yards off 5 play action pass attempts.
That's going to have to increase
significantly. And you look at the teams that run this style of offense and run it well, that's where they're getting their explosives from.
Could that have also had something to do maybe because their designated, I guess, pass catcher out of the backfield in Antonio Gibson was a little, banged up?
It could have been, but I'm more talking about like throws down the field off play action. Like you look at this Cleveland offense in the past with Flacco or Brissett in 2022, they are an air yards offense. Like they are trying to push the ball down the field off of play action. They're not trying to do what the Patriots have done in the past where it's like the tight end on a crossing route over the middle or a little seam or something like that. No, like they're trying to get that single high safety up top, hard play action, and we're bombs away, and we're going to try to attack single coverage on the outside. The Patriots weren't able to do that in this game. Some of that was because the Bengals were playing a lot of two deep safety and kind of conceding the run, and we can talk about it. It's kind of a trend in the league that we're going towards in this regard. But the other big part of it to me is the third thing and the first thing combining. The first thing being the protection being an issue, and the third thing is that Jacoby Brissett is just not a risk taker with the football. Now that can be good because you manage the game like you did on Sunday and you come out with wins because you're not turning the ball over. Mm-hmm. But when you watch the film, you see 3, 4, 5 instances where there's NFL open receivers down the field and he's passing up on those shots because he just doesn't want to rip it.
All right. Well, look, we're all pleasantly surprised, okay? Yeah. We're all, hey, they won the game. And, I think we even talked a little last week, said, don't be surprised if they play it tough or they get into the fourth quarter or have you a couple of breaks. They might be right there at the end. And we talked about that last week. And I don't think anybody outright expected them to win. They won because they played relatively cleanly, mistake-free. They forced turnovers. They played outstanding special teams, which to me was a huge bonus, I think. Not only was their special teams play clean, Joey Sly was perfect in field goals, which is good to have somebody that you can be reliant upon. Joe Cardona made the play for, popping the football loose on special teams. Schooler was a madman like he usually has been, and I know they really appreciate that. There's your Pro Bowl caliber special teamer, which it seems like New England is able to come up with. I think the thing that impressed me the most overall about the win was the fact that the defense was aggressive in going after the ball, punching at it, gouging at it, trying to flick it out of guys' hands. I mean, we saw that on 3 or 4 occasions, and they were able to come up with it a couple of times. And obviously the biggest play of the game was Cincinnati driving, and they lose the football on the pass over the middle, and they come up with the ball and run it basically out of the end zone. That was the game difference right there, was that one play.
Yeah, it's a 10-point swing in the game.
Huge.
And it really goes back to Gesicki dropping the touchdown in the end zone. That gets overturned on review, and then 2 plays later, they punch the ball out of Tanner Hudson's hands, and that's essentially a 10-point swing.
Right.
And I think the biggest thing with the defense, I as much as I have concerns still about the offense, major kind of red flag concerns about the offense, I can't give enough bouquets to the defense. I mean, they played an outstanding game in this game. The main thing was obviously the main game plan oriented aspect was all the different disguising and all the different coverages that they threw at Joe Burrow. They seldom showed Joe Burrow the same picture pre and post snap, so they were constantly just moving those safeties around. They were having like Christian Gonzalez drop into the deep part of the field at safety and in different rotations and shells and things like that, and they were really spinning the dial And they usually, sometimes you throw that out there as just like sounds fancy, right? But like this was truly a spin the dial game plan defensively. And to your point, they flew to the football.
And they spun it right. They had the right game plan. I think they realized what was coming at them. Shame on Cincinnati for not being better prepared, because I thought a better prepared team probably wins that game, but they weren't. So give kudos to the Patriots. Not every week are you going to have your opponent maxed out in terms of their preparation. Patriots wanted it more, and I think that's really the way it is, especially when things are more even early in the year. But I think one of the biggest problems or perceptions they're going to have to overcome as they step forward now into Seattle this week. First of all, Seattle, as we said, to me, at least upon first glance this week, looks very Patriot-like. Similarly, they have offensive line issues. They got a pretty stout, defensive line especially. They got a veteran quarterback that's been around the league a little bit. So there's some similarities there. But I think the Seahawks are better. Well, I know they're better thought of around the league. Case in point, Seattle is a 3.5-point road favorite against the Patriots this weekend, and they're coming 3 time zones eastward.
Yeah,
that's traditionally a tough thing for a West Coast team to do, is to come eastward like that 3 times. They're going to kick off at 10 o'clock in the morning their time, and yet they're a 3.5-point favorite. What does that tell me? It tells me a couple of things. Number one, the Patriots are still not well thought of overall by the bookies, especially in Vegas, right?
Yep.
Number two, they don't trust the Patriots. Number three, Seattle, in the last 10 years, and I looked this up today, has actually won about 65% of the games when they're coming eastward.
Yeah.
And, of course, they're coming eastward for every road game unless, of course, it's in California. But at the same time, when they're playing East Coast time, East Coast starts, they've actually performed pretty well since 2010. So that might be a little bit of an overstatement saying, they're coming east, let's get them early, blah, blah, blah. Okay, maybe, but I'm not so sure that's a definitive factor. Fact is they're coming east. The Patriots should be able to take advantage of that. We don't know yet if they're equipped to do that. This is going to be another test of what New England really has because, hey, and it's perfect cannon fodder for the locker room. I mean, these guys are coming all the way from Seattle, and they're a 3.5-point favorite on our home turf in our home opener.
Yeah.
Now, if that isn't bulletin board material, I don't know what else could be. Yeah. So you're going to have to try to figure out a way to ride that momentum again and a little bit of that emotional wave, and I think that could be beneficial this week.
Yeah, look, all those intangible things are probably what they're going to ride the wave on in a lot of situations because, to me, Seattle's favored because they're better. Like, they have more...
Well, they have better athletes up and down the roster.
They certainly have a better top half of the roster, like in terms of star power.
Wide receivers, let's start there. Right, so we know that, and that's why I made the comparison. It looks as if there are some similarities.
Yeah.
But when it comes to skill positions, man, especially at wideout, it's glaring.
Yeah. I mean, they have 3 receivers on the Seahawks roster that would be the number 1 receiver in New England.
Each of those 3.
Yeah. JSN, DK, Tyler Lockett would all be the Patriots' best receiver.
Yeah.
So they have a lot more star power on that side of the ball. I think the other thing that I look at is I don't love the matchup from an X's and O's standpoint for the Patriots. I think this is a bad matchup for them. The big thing with Seattle's defense and Mike McDonald, who is the Baltimore Ravens defensive coordinator last year, is that he runs a lot of exotic pressure packages, right? So he's going to put 5, 6, 7 guys up on the line of scrimmage, and then he's going to make you sort out who's coming and who's dropping post-snap.
So you're saying this would not be a good game for Drake Maye to make his debut?
Probably not, no. And I mean, last week we saw it with Bo Nix just running for his life for 4 quarters.
Yeah.
So it just... You see a lot of that exotic looks of, you don't know who's coming and who's dropping on any given play in this defense. That's how it's designed to go. So you talk about the Patriots' offensive line struggles, especially in pass protection. This is one of the best schemers of pass rush in the NFL in Mike McDonald. That's why he got the head coaching job in Seattle. He did it by having the number 1 defense in the league last year in Baltimore, right? So that's number 1. Number 2, on the offensive side of the ball, this is the trend that I was talking about. So in week 1, their teams across the league averaged 121.5 rushing yards per game. That's the highest in week 1 since 2008. So we're going on 2 decades since that was achieved by the league in week 1. A lot of these teams and this happened for Seattle last week against Denver, they're lighting the box. They're playing a lot of too high safety shell, 6 or 7 guys in the box, and they're basically just saying we are going to concede the run because you have Metcalf, you have Lockett, you have JSN. We're not going to get torched by your passing game, so run the ball. And Ryan Grubb, who's at
Cincinnati didn't take advantage of that.
No, they didn't until like the third quarter of the game. Ryan,
and then they turned it over.
Yeah. Ryan Grubb, who was at the University of Washington last year with the Huskies, with Michael Penix and Jalen Polk and Rome Odunze. He's now the offensive coordinator at Seattle, and he was the offensive coordinator for the Huskies last year. So he runs a very, very modern offense. They're going to shift. They're going to motion. They're going to have all sorts of bells and whistles and different types of run schemes and things like that. Influence traps and split flow zones and like all this crazy stuff that people like me just love to talk about. And they really ran the ball on Denver. Kenneth Walker ran the ball on Denver last week, and they were able to move the football on the ground. They didn't throw for very many yards either, but they were able to hang 26 points because the Broncos turned the ball over, and they were able to run the football. So I just look at the Patriots, and I would expect, again, just like Denver thought going into that game, well, we can't leave DK one-on-one, even though we have Surtain. Like, we're not going to do that for 4 straight quarters. We're going to play some zone. We're going to back off. We're going to do those sort of things. And all they did was hand the ball off to Kenneth Walker and watch him go. Yeah. And that's the problem in this matchup to me, is that they have an easy counter. If you're going to play the deep zones and things like that, they'll run the ball. Since he wouldn't, and they are also going to pressure the heck out of the quarterback. So I just look at those two things as the key to this game.
2 youngest head coaches in the NFL also matching wits between Mike McDonald, who beat out Gerard by a few months anyway.
Yeah, like a year.
Almost, like a full year almost. Yeah. So do you make anything out of that?
Yeah, it's cool. I wrote a little bit about this for my game preview. So Maye was hired early, obviously.
Right, before McDonald was hired
the successor, right? Yeah. And Mayo was the youngest head coach in the NFL at the time of his hire. 3 weeks later, the Seahawks hired McDonald, who beats him by a year. So McDonald's 37, Gerard is 38 years old. Both guys on the defensive side of the ball. McDonald's actually from Boston originally, so that's interesting. He was born in Boston. He went to high school in Georgia, but he was born in Boston. So there's a lot of similarities between how these 2 head coaches got to where they got to, and they're both defensive guys. So, they sharpen their teeth on the defensive side of the ball. So they're going to play great defense. They're going to be willing to run the ball, right? Like, I think that's the difference between a team like Cincinnati and a team like Seattle. Cincinnati with Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and all these receivers, like, they want to come out and throw the ball 45 times a game. The Seahawks have a defensive-minded head coach who's going to be willing to run the football.
I find it somewhat ironic that the 2 youngest head coaches in the league replaced the 2 oldest head coaches in the league because of Mike McDonald replacing Pete Carroll and obviously Gerard stepping in for Bill. Does that say anything from an organizational sense?
Well, I think what it does say, and this is something that I was sort of getting at with the schemes on both sides for Seattle, is these younger coaches are often looked at as like innovators in the league, and Bill was one of them. Once upon a time, he was on the other side of this whole thing, back with the Giants and the Browns, and eventually the Patriots. And like now, the innovator on the defensive side of the ball that everybody's mimicking is McDonald. Like, he's the one that's running the scheme that everybody emulates and everybody wants to see. On offense for Seattle, they do a lot of the same things in the run game that like San Francisco and Miami and like all these, young hotshot head coaches, McDaniel and LaFleur and Shanahan and McVay are running all of these crazy exotic, run schemes. They're doing a lot of those same things. So I'm kind of gushing about them because I'm like kind of envious about it, honestly. Like, I think AVP is doing a great job, but like the Patriots at the same time, last Sunday against the Bengals, they ran the ball by running gap. Like, they just ran duo. They double teamed on the inside. They moved the line of scrimmage.
It was pretty simplistic, but it worked.
And they let Ramondre go downhill, right? Yeah. And this team, like, you turn on the film with Seattle, and they got guys moving all over the freaking place.
And Ramondre had really great yak yards
Yes.
after contact. He really
Yeah.
did. I mean, it
Yeah.
was impressive after he'd get hit. I think, out of his 120 yards, over 100 of it was after contact?
Yeah, 118 after contact.
Amazing.
And 10 forced missed tackles. Yeah, he was amazing. But I will say, like, not to take away from Ramondre, but I was just talking about the gap or duo.
Yeah.
And those schemes tend to leave the DBs unblocked. So, like, we'll block the big dudes.
So
for
we'll
ya.
take our chances with him
Right.
going one-on-one with the DBs.
Right. So, like, Dax Hill was in a freaking blender the entire game, the poor guy.
Yeah.
And, like, he's 190 pounds soaking wet. And so if you're a 225-pound running back like Ramondre Stevenson and you're coming at Dax Hill at 12 miles an hour, basically full speed, and you're asking Dax Hill to then wrap and tackle that guy, like, good luck.
Wait, where's Bill Nye the Science Guy?
Yeah.
let's get the figures done on that one.
Right. It's sheer just like that is just old school football, right? My guy is bigger than your guy. And that's all it was on Sunday for the Patriots. The Seahawks, on the other hand, were, doing all the things that the tight pant OCs like to do that get me all hot and bothered, So we'll see.
Of course, he's Evan Lazar. I'm John Rook. Coming up on the program, Chris Price, who covers the Patriots for the Boston Globe. He's going to join us at the top of the hour. And then at the bottom of the hour, we will also hear from Doug Kyde, who covers the Patriots for the Boston Herald. And then in hour number 2, the one and only Russell Baxter will join us for week 2 around the NFL. In the meantime, you can join the show. It's 855-PATS-500. 855-PATS 500 toll free. The web address or the email, webradio@patriots.com, or you can also send a question via x.com, X, Twitter, that texty thing. At JR Broadcaster is the Twitter handle for the show that we use. Little birdie told me that you had a chance to speak to Drake Maye.
I did. I'm going to write a story about it probably tomorrow or Friday. We're going to talk to AVP, so I'd like to
Can
hear.
you share at least a detail or two that won't spoil your whole story and how, his first week as an official pro took form?
Yeah. Look, there's a lot of praise for Jacoby in there. I think a big thing for him is just watching Jacoby go through the week as the starter and just soaking it all in of what exactly goes into that and what it entails. And then obviously with Jacoby playing pretty well in the game and winning the game, that this is what it looks like when to put together a winning week, during we always hear about it, Wednesday to Saturday, right? Like, what are you doing on those days that it is preparing you for the game? The other little tidbit is just the Patriots and Drake Maye have adopted a lot of virtual reality technology, and this is like going to be a new age thing, I think, that some people are going to like and some people aren't, and that's okay. But yeah, it's pretty cool. He has literally a VR headset that they gave him to go home with.
Really?
And he has it on an iPad. That's like the app is
that's cool.
Yeah, so it's a virtual reality headset, and it's got the Patriots Playbook uploaded into it.
He's listening to us?
He's listening to us.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yes.
You beat me to the joke.
Yeah.
Matt was all ready for it.
No, the Patriots offensive playbook.
Yes, I know. I knew that.
I know you knew that. And he said that he goes through different scenarios, 2 minute, that type of stuff. And it puts you on the field, literally, like virtually on the field, and it puts you against the defense, and you can run plays and figure out where you're go through your reads and your progressions and stuff like that.
That is some serious advanced coaching.
Yeah. So they're doing a lot. I mean, look, I just started laying out the piece before I came on here with you, and it's the amount of things that they were able to do with him during the week behind the scenes is good. And it's surprising. He's in these meetings and they're going over the call sheet, the runs, the passes, different situations, things like that. He's got the earpiece on during the game. So so
he can hear the call.
Yeah, so he hears the call going into Jacoby Brissett, and then he's literally playing quarterback on the sideline.
So if he hears the call, he knows what he's got to do in terms of dialing it up.
Right, yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And then if on Monday maybe they might come back and Drake would say to Jacoby hey, why did you do that? Yeah. Why did you make that check, or why did you alert this, or
Which
whatever?
Is part of the reason why Jacoby is here.
Yeah.
To tutor.
Yeah. and he can learn from that. So as much as I know we all want to see Drake play and all that kind of stuff, talking to him, it did sound pretty valuable. And just like the last thing I'll say is, he sat behind. Of course, I'm blanking on the freaking quarterback's name. Sam Howell. At North Carolina for a couple years. So this isn't like totally foreign to him. And him and Sam Howell are like best friends, by the way. So this isn't like totally foreign to him to sit behind like a more veteran quarterback. Obviously, he joked that the age gap's a little bit different this time around than it was with Howell, but that's where we're at. They're out. I thought it was an interesting story to tell, just because I think there's a lot of interest from the fans on like what's Drake doing. He's not playing in the game, so we can't really see what he's doing behind the scenes. So hopefully this helps tell the story.
Well, what impressed you? And I appreciate that. So we'll look for that when tomorrow. Or
tomorrow or Friday.
Sometime.
Like
okay. So that'll be right here on the website. Now,
yeah.
What stood out to you in terms of a pleasant surprise, other than maybe the overall play of, say, the offensive line and the running game, about the game on Sunday, and that was something that you really didn't see coming?
Oh, that's a good question. That's tough because I guess like most of it was pretty expected. I guess the one thing would be Jacoby Brissett's mobility, like his ability to create yards with his legs. I think it even surprised Gerard Mayo. Like he's kind of joked about it since then. He joked about it on EEI. I won't say what he said because that let him make those jokes. But that was surprising. Like his what I would call sack avoidance, like just he's under pressure. It looks like they have him dead to rights, and like somehow he's just getting out of there. And then also he picked up 3 first downs with his legs, a couple on third down. So just moving the chains with his legs, and then also avoiding pressure, avoiding sacks with his legs. That's not typically a strong suit of Jacoby Brissett's throughout his career. It's not really who he is as an athlete. So that was surprising, and I do question how sustainable it is. Like I don't know if we're going to see Jacoby Brissett run around like that every single week, but Cincinnati didn't really respect his mobility at all. They played man coverage, and they had no spies or anything like that on him, and he took advantage of it. So if teams are going to do that and he can run for first downs, then by all means do it.
Is it safe to say that maybe the lack of the passing game and or effectiveness of the wide receivers in catching the ball, is that the biggest disappointment?
I would say so. I would say, play action. Like I really felt
mentioned that.
I really felt like that was going to be their way of moving the ball in the passing game. And look, it's 1 week; it could still come, but their way, they're not going to just line up against the defense and have guys get open all the time. Like they don't have the receiver talent to just win one-on-one matchups across the board like a team like Cincinnati or Seattle does. So they're going to need to scheme guys open, and they're going to need to find ways to scheme guys open off the run game. And that, I think, is the biggest hurdle that they have left to overcome. If they come out on Sunday, and I'll give you an example. Last week, they hit Tyquan on like a 17-yard completion off of play action. If they do that like 4 or 5 times, though, on Sunday, then all of a sudden I'm going to be like, all right, well, now you have run game, you have play action, like you're sequencing things together, you're starting to marry it up, and now we have an offense here that they can kind of work off of. But right now, just the run game by itself is not going to be enough.
All right. I'm just, is there enough there with just 1 week to having, we had a miserable preseason to kind of, slough through, which everybody does.
Yeah.
To me, I mean, this is I mean, if you've never really realized it, what happened in week 1, really in a lot of places around the NFL, underscores the fact that the preseason as presently exists is useless. As useless as the saying goes, as teats on a hog.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it's just not there.
Yeah. Ask Bo Nix.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
he looked
all
like
the rookie quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, and I think we expected that to a certain extent, right?
Yeah.
But at the same, I mean, Caleb Williams threw for 80 yards, 83 yards, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Bears won the game because defense and special teams, right?
Right.
Patriots won their game because of what? Defense and special teams, and the running game was pretty solid.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what's sustainable
about what the Patriots did?
Yeah, especially with what the Patriots did. What do you find is most sustainable out of that, or what should they be relying on? In other words, where is the identity of this team, do you think, beginning to develop? Because we won't fully know it until we get at least through the first month of the season.
Well, I do. The good news is, and I know I I said that I don't feel like it's totally sustainable what they did on Sunday to win in that fashion every single week.
Right. It won't be sustainable in that fashion.
No.
I agree with that.
But the good news is that in terms of foundation or identity, like you're talking about, I kind of feel like that is their identity. They're going to be a good defense. They're going to run the football.
And they're going to say, stop us.
Yeah, and now they just need to find ways. What's your counterpunch, right? Like that, they didn't have a counterpunch against Cincinnati offensively.
They did not.
But if they can start to establish a counterpunch, now we're cooking. Like now we got something brewing here. If it's only going to just be Ramondre and a defense, then that's not going to yield very many wins.
Yeah.
Like they're going to be a 5 or 6 win team with that.
Chris line 6.
If you can get that counter punch going, now we maybe can start talking about them overachieving from their win total and stuff like that.
What are your thoughts then about Sunday overall?
It scares me. It does because
you mentioned it earlier. You're not sure you like the individual matchups.
I don't love the individual matchups at all. I'm sure the Patriots defense will be able to stop Seattle's passing game if that's what they want to do. You're not throwing on us, but the Seahawks' willingness to run the ball last week versus Cincinnati's just disdain for the running game.
And they did run it against Denver.
It worries me because that's the counter for them, right? If you're going to play too high,
they have something that the Patriots are trying to achieve.
Yeah. I agree with that. And defensively, obviously, with the way they pressure the quarterback, the Patriots have got to stay out of 3rd and long. They have to stay out of obvious pass situations. Like they just have to be an on-schedule offense this week.
Okay.
Otherwise, McDonald is going to come after Brissett.
You want to make a prediction?
I would take Seattle. I don't have a score yet.
3.5-point favorite. Are you going to take the Patriots to cover or Seattle to?
Let's go 23-20. So
you have the Patriots covering it by half a point.
Barely covering. I think that's why they can make money in Vegas because 3.5 is exactly where this line should be.
Where it should be. So 23-20?
I think 23-20. Now, all the things that you said earlier about the intangible, motivation and all that stuff, like I'm more than happy to allow that to happen, right? I really am. But I just
tack it up on the bulletin board.
As a guy that just an X's and O's guy, I just look at the matchup and I'm like, I think Seattle has a little too much.
They probably do. I think you have to admit that, but it's a vastly different feel this week than I think we expected to feel.
Yeah, that's totally fair, and I will allow also for the fact that a lot of people have given Jacoby credit and rightfully so, but I keep on harping on the fact that I feel like there's another level there that they need the quarterback to get to if they're going to really win games. And maybe he looks at the film from last week and says, oh, I had some chances here, I had some chances there, and they come out of it differently. Like when you have a 10-point lead at halftime, like there's no reason to push the ball down the field when you're not 100% sure that you can get it there, right? Like, and now you're letting the other team back in the game.
Right.
So maybe if you're in a different situation, he is a little bit more aggressive.
All right. Ev, thanks, buddy.
Of course, anytime.
Appreciate you. We'll look forward to the piece on Patriots.com on
Yes.
Drake Maye's first official week as a professional quarterback.
Yeah,
right?
I like it, right?
All right.
Very cool. Say hi
Very
to Chris
good.
for me.
You got it. All right. The one and only EZ Lazar on Twitter, X, whatever, again. Why do I get I don't know. Do people understand when I say X or X.com or whatever that they know that that's Twitter now?
Yeah, yes.
Do people understand? Okay, because I don't.
But it's also okay to refer to it as Twitter. I think you only need to refer to it as X if you're for like legal purposes. You know what I mean?
Why do we need to have legal purposes?
No, we don't. You can call it whatever you want is what I'm saying. Call it Twitter, call it X.
That thing. I know. That thing.
The thing that the loudmouth runs.
Yeah, exactly. The thing that Elon Musk is trying to shoot rockets into Mars, that thing that he's, run. And people think he's not running it very well anyway. I don't know. I don't really keep up with that end of it. I just know that it's a good conduit to be able to, talk some sports, talk some football, talk current events, talk about, political debates. No, let's not do that today, okay? Let's definitely not do that today. All right, here at the top of the hour, Patriots fans, if you want to see Toyota's best offers, including those not seen on TV, go to buyatoyota.com. It's Toyota's official website for deals from the official vehicle of the New England Patriots, Toyota. Let's go places. And show's brought to you by Bud Light. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy, Bud Light, the official beer sponsor of the New England Patriots. We welcome into the program Chris Price, who covers the Patriots for the Boston Globe. He has been a frequent contributor and guest on this show over the course of our now 24 seasons getting into this thing. And Chris, it's always good to chat a little football with you. And how is the noted book author doing today?
I'm doing really well, JR. How you doing, my friend?
Everything's good, my man. Everything's good. What's the last? Forgive me. What is the last? You just published something, did you not?
Well, there was a book that came out last year, the history of the Hartford Whalers. Actually,
That's it.
last year, 2 years ago.
That's
actually.
the one.
Wow,
That's the one.
2 years ago. Yeah, the history of the Hartford Whalers, which was a blast to do as a kid growing up in Connecticut. But now, I'm glad you asked because October 1st, I have a new football trivia book.
Nice.
It was a blast to do. Skyhorse Publishing, they do tremendous work. It's just it was a lot of fun, and I had a lot of fun putting it together. And it should be out, October 1st. Very excited.
Title? What's the title? Give us the title.
Here, it's something along the lines of nature, man. This is horrible. I don't know right off the top of my head. Here we go. The Great Football Trivia Challenge: 600 questions to test your knowledge.
Nice.
Yeah,
okay.
and it's basically it's a sequel in a lot of ways to the Ultimate Football Trivia book, which I did for them a couple of years ago, which had 600 questions as well. So,
awesome.
Yeah, another 600 questions again. It was a blast to put together. So much fun.
Where or do you know yet where people can go when they want to purchase?
Yeah, you can actually go to skyhorsepublishing.com. That's all one word, just like it sounds, skyhorsepublishing.com. You can also get it at Amazon, pre-order at Amazon, barnesandnoble.com. Find bookstores everywhere. It's going to hit the streets October 1st.
And I only have one other question about this. When I get my copy, will you autograph it?
Oh, you kidding me? Of course. Man. That's one of the great things about doing this, JR. And I think we've even talked about this before. If you think enough of me to plunk down like $19.99, I think this one's $14.99.
Oh, that's a good deal.
I will sign as many copies. I will write whatever you want me to.
Right. I love that. Okay, that sounds great. That sounds like a deal. Speaking of a deal, the Patriots had themselves a deal this last week on the road, and I think to the pleasant surprise of so many, which is great. Just spent the last 30 minutes or so talking about it with Evan Lazar, and I think while we're all pleasantly surprised and pleased, I think we all realize that there's still a long way to go. And I'm just curious as to your point of view, what your initial reaction was to getting a win, and what your initial reaction would be to trying to sustain what they started in week one.
I think it was a pleasant surprise. I really do. And, you take off your sports writer. I was talking with Mike Reese about this. You take off your sports writer hat, put on a human being hat, and you realize that these guys, you feel good for them because, they were questioned and they were doubted and, for all spring and all summer and just, a coaching staff, players, the way they went about their business. A lot of people, had a lot of questions about where they were. And
sure.
For them to receive that level of validation after one game, admittedly, it's one game. Look, we've been around here an awful long time, you and I, and so we can say that. It's one game. But in that one game, they played well. They rose to the challenge. They met the challenge. I think they played well on, in all three phases of the game. And they came out of there with a well-deserved win. Now, the question is, that I still have, and I was talking to a couple people about this in the locker room today, and just kind of a couple people around the league, the idea of how do you handle that as a young team? How adept are you at closing the door on that and looking ahead to the challenge of the Seattle Seahawks? And I think that's where we're going to get a real sense of where this team is at right now mentally. Because, again, they're a younger team. This is all new to a lot of them, and it was great that they got that victory. Again, it was a really impressive victory on the road against a team with legitimate Super Bowl aspirations. How they handle that now and, their approach looking forward, I think is going to really go a long way toward determining their legacy, even as we sit here in September.
What do we make of the fact that they played that game really the way I think that Bill Belichick would have drawn it up? And so does that say more about the talent on the team? Does that say more about, BB's influence on a guy like Gerard Mayo, even though he's got basically a brand new coaching staff underneath him? What do we make out of that?
And I heard you talking about it with Evan before he came on.
Yep.
It really felt like a retro game.
Sure did.
Isn't it? Like a 2003, Corey Dillon running for 2004. Corey Dillon running for 125 yards, and you get tough defense. You get a little special teams magic.
Yeah.
You go in and you pull off the upset. I think the test from an on-field perspective this week is going to be, can they be multiple? Are they capable of being multiple? You want to get the passing game more involved. You want to take a few more deep shots down the field because now people know. People not that people didn't necessarily know before, but Ramondre Stevenson's a force to be reckoned with. The Patriots can run the ball. They can mix things up. They can do a few different things, particularly when it comes to the running game and the schemes that they can put together, and they can kind of game plan it. So
sure, they
can find some matchup wins. But look, if I'm Seattle, I'm bringing the extra safety down in the box. I'm going to say, okay, Jacoby, beat me over the top. Beat me with Jalen Polk. Beat me with Pop Douglas. We're not going to get beaten by Ramondre Stevenson. And so now it's like a pitcher the second time through the order, rookie pitcher the second time through the order. All right, we've seen all this stuff. Now we got to come up with a way to stop it.
Yeah.
And so I think knowing Seattle and their defensive approach, they're going to try and come up with a way to stop it, obviously. And it's on Alex Van Pelt and Jacoby Brissett and the rest of the offense to say, all right, you think you got us, you think you got us pegged? Well, here we go. We're going to put together some work in the passing game that's going to throw you guys for a loop, and it's going to surprise you. And, this is what we want to do now moving forward. We want to be a multiple offense. We want to be a game plan offense, and we want to have a different look each and every week that plays to our strengths.
Am I wrong to think that this is also where the Patriots really could use Christian Barmore? Because my thought is that Seattle is likely going just to, see if they can't drive it a little bit and use that to kind of set up, opening up their wide receivers. And if they're able to have some, success running the ball like they did against Denver in Week 1, I think that's a pretty good. I think that might be a pretty good mix to trying to win on the road.
Yeah, exactly. I think that obviously the more you have Barmore back, the better. I will say this too: when you look at this game this week, obviously you're not going to have Barmore this week, but this game specifically sets up to be, if both teams play to our strengths, it should be a 2.5 hour game, because you're just going to run the ball, you're going to kill the clock, you're going to take all the air out of the ball, and the game's going to end up 13-10. Yeah, this is, if you want to be that kind of team, if you want to be a tough physical team that wins in the trenches, you're going to need Barmore back sooner rather than later. And I think, we've seen some pretty good performances over the course of the preseason and the first regular season game by the guys up front, but you need to be able to have Barmore back because he is such a key part of what you want to get done offensively.
And I know he's on IR with a designation to return, so we hope that he continues to work himself out of the issue that he had with the blood clots. The other thing that surprised me really about Week 1, Chris, was the defense seemed to attack a little bit more, especially going after the football. Forced fumbles, forced mistakes, forced the turnovers. And I think a little more so than maybe they had done over the last couple of years, certainly under the former regime. And it looks like they certainly, at least through 1 week, they've had more success with it. You were at practice, you were at camp, you saw all of these practices over the course of the summer. What led you to think that might be a possibility? Because we really have a tendency to focus only on the negative. So did that come as a surprise to you at all?
Well, I think it's tough, JR, because when you look at that can be a dangerous game to play, and you have to have a very specific, I think, kind of player who can do it, because when you do that, when you force the tempo, when you go looking for takeaways, when you go looking for forced fumbles and interceptions, if you swing and miss, it could end up as 6 points in the other direction. So I think you need a specific player to be able to do that, one with extraordinary ball skills. And I think they do have some guys, particularly in the secondary, who have that skill. I will say this. I remember DeMarcus Covington, his first press conference, talking about how they want to be more aggressive and they want to force takeaways and they want to do more of that. And so I think that's his vision for this defense, is to play aggressive football. Now, again, this is the kind of thing that could come back to hurt him, against another team, another game plan, another scheme, different set of personnel, whatever the case may be. But for last Sunday, it certainly worked against the Bengals team that was, quite frankly, underwhelming on both sides of the ball. So, I guess ultimately, to answer your question, it can be a difficult game to play. I know it's very easy to sit here and say, well, you want to be a defense that forces takeaways and kind of is aggressive and gets after the ball, but you also need to be mindful of not extending yourself too much, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
And
No, yeah.
leaving yourself too vulnerable.
Yeah, totally. The other thing that I thought was the pleasant surprise that could actually win them some games before this year's over with is the clean play on the special teams. I mean, the special teams unit was ranked second in the NFL after 1 week, and I know it's only 1 week as an example, but Joey Sly, Cardona made a play enforcing a fumble, Brendan Schooler flying all over the place, and I'm like, okay, so they know what to do, and if good special teams play can help give them an edge, this is a part of the team that nobody figured really would be a difference maker, but we learned even after 1 week that it could be a difference maker.
You know this, man. For so many years, they won those games on the margins, thanks in large part to special teams play.
Yeah.
If they can get a little bit of that special teams mojo back, if they can get, one big play a game on special teams, whether it's the forced fumble we saw from Cardona, Bryce Behringer continues to, pin teams inside their, inside the 20-yard line.
Mm-hmm.
If you can get Joey Sly making field goals from 40 yards plus, if you can get one good return a game from a guy like Marcus Jones, you're on your way, man. And look, that's a big difference. It is. It's a huge difference maker. I always come back to the idea that, look, as bad as things got last year, they lost 8 games by 7 points or less. And if they can get a little special teams magic in those games, maybe they win 2 or 3 of them. They go 6-11 or 7-10, and everything is different this offseason. But yeah, I mean, special teams can be a difference maker, and I think we saw that at least to some extent on Sunday. The other thing too, I love Chad Ryland. Chad Ryland was my guy, but Joey Sly making 3 field goals in a 1-score game, that's tough to beat. And, when you're getting that kind of special teams play, you're going to be a tough out. I don't care who you're playing against.
Yeah, Chad Ryland, as a draft pick, I thought he had the benefit of the doubt here, and he's got, I think, maybe the heavier leg. But Sly seemed to have just a slight edge in consistency, and I know that was important to this particular staff.
Yeah, it really was. And he it was a really good competition over the course of the summer. I just missed Chad Ryland because he was another baseball guy in the locker room, and it was fun to talk about the pennant race. But my best to him down the road, and, Joey Sly, if he continues to kick like this, it certainly appears they made the right move.
Yeah, and Chad Ryland probably only needs to keep his phone, near his, his bedside, nightstand, because chances are somebody in this league is going to give him a call before too much longer. Because again, Chris Price, Boston Globe with him. Chris, because you've been around long enough, I wanted to venture just slightly for a minute here before we let you go about some historical perspective here, because I noticed that ESPN put out today a story about how Robert Kraft has struggled to get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and then I also because I'm on the reception of the committee here, they nominated their veterans for 2025's class. And I think Patriot fans everywhere are always wondering, why doesn't Gino Cappelletti get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame? And he was on the nomination list again that was released yesterday by the Pro Football Hall of Fame. And so I just wanted to ask you about those two particular stories and what chances maybe the Patriots have to be represented from the senior or the veteran's point of view.
Well, first of all, let me tackle Gino. I wrote, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago, I did a column, was talking to the late great Gil Santos about Gino Cappelletti. And people, if you don't know Gino Cappelletti, go back, check YouTube, check the stats. He was Mr. AFL for a decade. And I still believe, and it's not so much now as it was 20, 30, 40 years ago, there is a bit of a disrespect card to be played when you're talking about guys who played in the AFL as opposed to the NFL.
Right.
I'm talking specifically pre-merger. There are a lot of people out there who don't think that the AFL stars were up to snuff when it came to stacking them against the NFL stars. Look, Gino was one of the best. And you could make an argument for his work as a broadcaster that he could, he should be, thought of as a contributor as well. I think it's overdue that we're even having this conversation. I think he's a guy who, even if you would vote against him, even if you did not appreciate him as a player, as a contributor, whatever the case may be, I think he deserves to be part of the conversation when you talk about the Pro Football Hall of Fame, given the breadth of his career, particularly as an on-field contributor in the American Football League.
All-time leading scorer in the AFL.
Yeah. Exactly.
All-time leading scorer in the AFL. How is that not worthy of the Pro Football Hall of Fame?
And he played multiple positions.
Yeah.
And he was one of the best in the league, over an extended period of time. It's just, again, I think really, and you see a lot of it. It's funny. I talked to, we talked at the top of me writing about the Hartford Whalers, and there's a similar bias when you talk about the Hockey Hall of Fame and the WHA.
Yeah.
And, the Whalers obviously in the WHA and they're merging in the NHL, and they don't necessarily recognize statistics from guys who are in the WHA and the NHL. They just recognize the NHL statistics. And so again, I think there's just an inherent bias there. Considering a lot of people consider that league substandard, whatever the case may be. I just think Gino, again, given his work as an on-field, as a player on the field, contributor off the field, longtime broadcaster, I think he's earned a right to at least be part of the conversation. If I had a vote, I would vote for him. But again, I understand that if you did not necessarily grow up in this era, in this area, in that era, you may not necessarily know the impact of Gino Cappelletti on the franchise. I can tell you the other thing about the Robert Kraft's quest to get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
For me, again, if I was a voter, I would put him in. But voters are
fickle,
squirrely.
Fickle.
Yeah, they're fickle. They're particular. And look, I understand. I don't agree with it, but I understand why people might have some trepidation around a Robert Kraft candidacy when it comes to Deflategate, Spygate, all of the drama that's kind of swirled around this franchise for the last 20 or so years. At the same time, all point to guys like Jerry Jones, and I think Jerry Jones is, has had a incredible run as an owner of one of the most important professional sports franchises on the planet. I would stack Robert Kraft's off-field behavior up against Jerry Jones.
No question. That's absolutely where I was going with this. Jerry Jones made the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2017. Okay, this is so. Since then, they've had 7 more seasons, or going on 7 anyway. More seasons of disappointments, of not living up to expectations, of failures by the owner, who happens to also be the GM, in developing a team that wins. And he's certainly had more than his fair share of, shall we say, bicycle wobbles along the way. I don't know how I came up with that one, but that's kind of how I look at it. Let's get back on track. And on top of all of that, you can't tell me that Mr. Kraft hasn't had a significant amount of influence on not only the television contracts, but the success of a franchise, building it from basically nothing when he got it to, an entity that's worth $7.5 billion today. I mean, and the only reason that comes to my mind has to be jealousy. And I'm not even sure that that's an accurate word, but there's enmity there. There's something there that it's kind of like, hey, I'll be nice to your face, but behind you, I'm going to MF you.
Yeah, I think there are two things. I think, first of all, from speaking to voters, like I've done stories on like Rodney Harrison and Fitz Wilfork and Vinatieri, and I've talked to a lot of voters. And voters, they don't like to be lobbied, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
They don't like to be told this is why you should vote for this guy.
So maybe he should back off of his lobbying efforts? Yeah,
I think that's a small part of it. I do. And then the other thing too, though, specifically about Jerry has got enough P.T. Barnum in him to be endearing to just about anyone if you sit down with him in a one-on-one or in a smaller setting. Mm-hmm. And that's not to say that Robert is not the same way. It's just Jerry has whatever it is.
He does.
Charisma, duende, whatever phrase you want to put to it.
Duende, that's a good one. Yeah.
And he can sell it, man. He can sell it better than just about anyone. And maybe Robert needs a little bit more of that when it comes to it. But it really, for me, like I said, speaking with a lot of voters, a lot of Hall of Fame voters do not like being lobbied,
told what
because
to do.
They take it as being someone is preaching to them, or someone is scolding them that they haven't put someone like this in the Hall of Fame yet. So I think he's going to get in. I do. I just don't know when.
Yeah.
I think Robert is going to get in eventually because, to your point, look, he was the owner of a team, 6 Super Bowls, so much when it came to the TV contracts and just all of it. Again, a really, really impressive legacy. I just don't know when it's going to happen.
I had the chance, I think it was the time before the last time that the Cowboys were here in Foxborough. Had a chance to talk with Jerry, and he was very kind to grant an interview. And you're right. I was basically nobody, and he, was a showman. He absolutely, he turned it on because he knew I was going to record his comments for publication somewhere. And so I give the guy credit in terms of PR sense. He knows exactly what to do and how to push those buttons. And, I don't necessarily think that that's Mr. Kraft's downfall. I happen to agree with you. I think that those especially who are grizzled veterans and old cutters who don't like to be told what to do, I think you're exactly 100% right in terms of the Veterans Committee. So maybe discretion is the better part of valor here, where it is trying to convince people. As long as we state the case and then back off and let that case sort of sit there, that might be the tack to take right now. I hope that he's able to get into the hall before he's not able to enjoy it.
And that's the thing. I think that's the only thing that I would respond. That's the only thing I would say in response to people who, when I just brought up the idea, they don't like being lectured to, they don't like, they don't like being lobbied. Yeah. That look, there's a finite amount of time here, and so if you do want to put him in the Hall of Fame and you want to have a kind of tie a nice bow on this story, that's the best way to go about doing it.
Yeah. Chris, thanks for the time today, brother. It's always good to talk to you. I really appreciate it.
I love it. Take care, my friend, and we'll talk again soon.
See you on Sunday.
Yes, sir.
You got it. Chris Price, the one and only Chris Price, covers the Patriots for the Boston Globe. He's at C Price Globe on Twitter. The hell with it. I'm calling it Twitter. Okay?
I call it Twitter.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm going to do. All right? I'm also going to call on Patty in Agawam. Thanks, Patty, for hanging in. You're in the playbook, brother.
No problem for hanging on. It's always a pleasure to hang on to talk to you.
I'm glad that you take the time, my friend. What's on your mind today?
So I'll go over a few things. First of all, the Duke absolutely belongs inside the Hall of Fame. I never watched him play, but just look at the stats. Look at how we separated as a wide receiver back in that era. You tell the guy was just great. 2 more guys, Stanley Morgan, absolutely belongs in the Hall of Fame. I think he still has the highest average yards per catch for anyone who, whatever qualifier that they have in the NFL. Mm-hmm. That's over 19 yards, something like 19.2, I think. And Rodney Harrison, I mean, I'll never stop saying this. I cannot believe that Brian Dawkins is in the Hall of Fame and Rodney Harrison isn't. Yeah. And I made the same correlation with Aeneas Williams when he got in years before Ty Law, and I'm like, tell me a big play that guy made in a big game. They were great players, absolutely deserving to be in there. But like Law, Harrison, those guys played at their best.
I have to think
Super Bowl 42, notwithstanding.
Yeah. I have to think, Patty, that Rodney gets in this year, through the regular means. I have to think, because I think he was close last year. There was a little bit of a stink when he didn't get in, and he's had, people like Bill Belichick, pushing for his candidacy. I have to think that's going to happen. That being said, there are 2 other names I think that will ring familiar with Patriots fans who are on the veterans or the seniors nominating committee. There's 183 names from Pro Football's past on the initial list. Yep. So it stands to reason there's going to be a few Patriots on the list. I counted them, and the guys that I recognize, there are only 3 who played in New England for any appreciable amount of time. They are going to whittle this list apparently to 50 before the Veterans Committee is actually going to consider their candidacy, based on what I've been told. The other 2 names, Jim Plunkett and Mark Van Eegen, who both played a considerable portion of their careers elsewhere. But Jim Plunkett's a former, number 1 draft pick. And, in fact, the first reaction I had was, damn, he's not in the Hall of Fame already? I didn't really realize that. And Mark Van Eegen is a dear friend. He spent much of his his years, his good years playing football with the Oakland Raiders under John Madden, and wound up his career playing in New England in the late '80s before he finally retired. So but he was a part of those Oakland Raider teams that Chris Berman likes to wax or used to like to wax poetic about on ESPN. So I find that odd. I just like you, Gino Cappelletti is as I just mentioned with Chris, dude led the AFL all time in scoring. 10 years for this league before it merged with the NFL in 1970. He led the AFL in scoring. How is that not pro football worthy?
Right, and it's the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It's not
Correct.
the NFL Hall
Not
of
the
Fame.
NFL Hall of Fame. It's the Pro
Hall
Football Hall of Fame. And so, if you're getting a paycheck to play football, there should be an avenue to get in.
And guys, I'm sure you know because you covered it when it was going on, but guys like Jim Kelly and Warren Moon who played in the USFL, all their statistics are there,
Mm-hmm.
They still count that as being part of pro football, and
course.
all of that,
Yeah.
Is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
So let's get down to a couple other things I want
Go.
to talk about.
Go.
I called it. I called it here on the show last Wednesday that the Pats were going to win. Now, I didn't get the score right.
You did.
I predicted a little
You
bit
did,
higher.
and I
think
told you
it's
I'd give you credit, so
21.
I'm glad you called. I had to make sure that I took your call, and if you hadn't called, I would have said, hey, I think we did have one or two fans pick the upset, and you're one of them.
And I'll tell you what, this week coming up, I think if they sort of stick to the same game plan, I think they need to open up the passing game a little bit more.
They're going to have to.
I don't think they're going to get away with throwing just 21 passes.
No, they're going to have to open it up because, like Evan and Chris Price both mentioned, Seattle's going to try to take away, Ramondre, and so that means, it's going to be upon, Jalen Polk. It's going to be upon, Hunter Henry. These guys, and certainly I think, it's going to be, God, what am I thinking here already?
Pop Douglas?
I would say that Douglas would have to be the next one in line because, as a slot receiver, when you're going over the middle, you're going to have to do some crisscrossing, and, you're going to have to be that safety valve. I also think that Antonio Gibson, as long as he's, perfectly healthy, he's going to have to be an option coming out of the backfield. So I think he might get more snaps of the football because of that.
Yeah, that's a good call. I was going to bring him up, too. But, I said this on PU yesterday, too. Like, if you look at just basing it completely on last year's statistics, Seattle was the second worst team as far as, average rushing yards per game. They were tied for the second worst team in rushing touchdowns allowed with the Giants with 24, and I think the Cardinals or somebody had 25. So I think this is a team that, impose your will, kind of do the same thing you did last week against the Bengals. They know you're going to run it. They're probably going to stack the box, but just, keep beating them or keep pounding the rock until they prove they can stop it. And, just basing it on last year, I didn't see any of the Denver-Seattle game this past week, so I can't tell you how good they did against the run. But I think, just statistically speaking, it looked like they did a pretty good job. But I think we're at least, as far as identity goes, I think the Broncos, with them doing a whole restart with Bo Nix and everything, they're still same thing. They're still trying to, re-identify and reestablish.
Sure, and I that's where I think the Patriots may have their best opportunity coming up because, when you look at Seattle's win over Denver last week, I think, they kind of caught Denver a little by surprise, and they put a lot of pressure on Bo Nix, and they made it difficult for him to operate. And Seattle, by the way, in the first half of that game against Denver, I don't know how much you saw of it, but they were miserable. They scored 17 points in the second half to win that game. They scored 4 points on 2 safeties, which is nuts. When was the last time that happened? So
that's pretty awesome.
So I agree. That's awesome. But at the same time, they had to go to unusual means in order to be able to get themselves some cushion, to win against Denver. So, they got some breaks too. But the Patriots also, made their own breaks and were able to win on the road like that. And And now Seattle's got to come, travel on the road for the first time. And so I think that's where, the Patriots have to know Seattle's going to target what they do best. So let's see how well, Alex Van Pelt and Gerard Mayo and Jacoby Brissett and the offense, let's see how well they scheme this up, come up with a plan to counterpunch, because they're going to need a counterpunch.
Yeah, and just going forward after this week, I know it's going to get a lot tougher, but I think that they can run on this team. And, I know, Pats fans may grumble and groan about, it's boring, and, when are they going to open it up and pass the ball? But if they're winning, who really cares? You know what I mean? I think this team could start out 0-2. And I know Freddie has said the hardest weeks to call are weeks 1, 2, and 17, and this is why, because, we saw it for the better part of 20 years when we had the greatest coach and greatest quarterback. They didn't get their footing in September. They got their footing starting in October throughout, to the end of the season.
Yeah. And I think we find that that's the case with a lot of good football teams.
Yeah, but I like the fact that our guys can sneak up on a couple of these teams and possibly possibly go 2-0.
Now's the time to do it.
I'm going to pick them again.
Okay.
I'm going to pick them again, John.
Okay.
I'm going to go 20-13 this week.
Ooh. Okay. So you like the defense in that one, huh, Patty? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's going to be another white knuckle game, and I'll be on the edge of my seat, getting ready for a nap once the game ends, from eating a good breakfast and
okay, all right,
spending a lot of energy yelling at my television.
I'm exactly, and I'm sure especially if they move to 2-0, we'll talk about it next week.
All right, buddy. Always great to talk to you, John.
Always
good
glad.
Week. I'll talk to you next week.
Thank you, sir. Always good to have you on. I appreciate that. Patty and Agawam. Let's bring in Doug Kide, who covers the Patriots for the Boston Herald, joining us here in the Playbook. Hey, Doug. Great to talk to you, my man. How's it going?
Hey, John. I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
Excellent. Excellent. What surprised you the most about Week 1 and New England's performance overall?
I mean, honestly, the fact that they won surprised me the most. And it wasn't a perfect performance by any means, and they were certainly helped out by the Bengals and T. Higgins being out and Joe Burrow not looking like himself. But I mean, yeah, no one predicted the Patriots to win that game. They were the biggest underdogs in the league heading into Week 1, and they pulled it off. So I think that and. No, it certainly wasn't a maybe ideal performance by the offensive line when you dig into the numbers a little bit deeper, but it wasn't an outright disaster. So I would say that perhaps surprised me a little bit as well.
Were they really, in your estimation, one of the two worst teams in the NFL before last week?
I mean, they didn't look like it in Sunday's game. But I can understand that from a roster construction perspective, and then also based on how they performed last season. I can certainly understand why they would have been regarded that way heading into Week 1, because, even as I was putting together some 53-man roster projections and everything like that, the roster just really is not that deep. So I think that depth could still be an issue for the Patriots here moving forward, and I think that goes into some of those predictions heading into the season. But there's also certainly areas where the Patriots improved from last year, and I think one of those that showed up in maybe not a major way, but certainly showed up on Sunday was the improvement at quarterback.
What then do you make of the fact that this team is a 3.5-point home dog? Is that just because the respect factor around the league, or especially from the bookies, just isn't there yet?
Yeah, definitely. I think that some people are probably still looking at that Week 1 win as a fluke, and I think that's fair. I think there's even people within the building with the Patriots who still don't expect the Patriots to win that many games this season.
You want to name names?
I think that, no, I won't be naming names, right. But I don't think that expectations are still necessarily that high after Week 1, and I also think it just has to do with the Seahawks having a talented roster. I mean, especially on defense. They've got stars and future stars all over that unit. On offense, they've got great skill position players at running back and wide receiver. So I think that plays a pretty big factor. But most of it really is just the expectations for the Patriots heading into the season carrying over here into week 2.
Based on what you saw over the course of the summer, leading into the preseason, and now with the pleasantly, I guess, surprising week 1 performance, what really stands out to you as being like, I didn't see this coming?
I think that, I mentioned the offensive line.
Yeah.
And I thought that there was a possibility that heading into week 1 that it was really just going to be an outright disaster. And that's not necessarily what we saw. They did allow a 44.8 pressure rate to the Bengals defensive line. 118 of Ramondre Stevenson's 120 yards came after contact.
After contact, yeah.
So, I think that Jacoby Brissett and Ramondre Stevenson both helped the offensive line look better maybe than it really was, but there were still holes for Ramondre Stevenson. They still helped bring him into the end zone for the touchdown. Jacoby Brissett was under pressure, but maybe not so quickly that he couldn't get the ball out fast. He wasn't under pressure so quickly that he couldn't turn some of those plays into scrambles and throwaways and everything. So I think that really is the thing, is that the offensive line looked like it could have been a whole lot worse. And we saw that in that joint practice against the Eagles, where the Patriots could barely form an offense. Their offensive line was allowing so many pressures, and that's not necessarily what we saw against the Bengals.
Okay. Have you had a chance to look into what Seattle might bring to the table, any at all, yet to this point in time, and what are your initial impressions? Yeah,
I think that this could be a tougher game overall for the Patriots offensive line, going against guys like Leonard Williams and Boye Mafe.
Yeah.
They've got 2 really good cornerbacks, and Devin Witherspoon and Tariq Woolen. I think that could make life a little bit difficult on not only Jacoby Brissett, but on the wide receivers as well. Tariq Woolen has been a guy who's done a lot of interceptions in his young NFL career. So That's one thing that Jacoby Brissett is. He's tied for Aaron Rodgers with the lowest interception rate in NFL history, but he nearly threw an interception on Sunday. Hunter Henry did a great job of defending that pass against Geno Stone. But, yeah, I think that's going to be the issue on offense for the Patriots, just how many talented players the Seahawks really have across all units. On offense, I mentioned it before, but Kenneth Walker is a great running back, and the Patriots' secondary depth is really to be tested with DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and Tyler Lockett. Those are 3 really different wide receivers who all have a ton of talent, and even if Christian Gonzalez is able to take away DK Metcalf, they still have the other 2 to worry about, and even if Jonathan Jones can take away a Lockett, then Smith and Jigba could be an issue for Marcus Jones. So all 3 of those cornerbacks are really going to have to be on the top 30.
Yeah, I listen, the talent that they have at wide receiver, we talked a little bit about this in the first hour of the show, but to me, that's the X factor here. Somehow, either the pass rush is going to have to really, lay it down on Geno, which, obviously Denver did it to an extent in the first half, but in the second half, they rolled, and so it was not sustainable. Whatever Denver did, it wasn't sustainable, and it certainly didn't help them in getting a win. And the Patriots are going to need a lot of help with 3 outstanding receivers on that side of the ball. There's a lot of guys that can go get it. Geno Smith just has to kind of put it up there.
Yeah, and Geno Smith certainly not a top 10 quarterback in the NFL or anything like that. You can force mistakes out of him. But we'll see the Patriots' defensive line, their pass rush has to be more effective in this game. Keon White had a huge game with 2.5 sacks, but otherwise he was not getting a ton of help out there. So I think that you have to see a better game from guys like Daniel Aquale, Josh Uche, Dietrich Wise when he's mixed into the group. It can't all just be the Keon White show in there. And I think that there's a pretty massive difference between Kenneth Walker, who the Seahawks have at running back, and what the Bengals have out there at running back. So Patriots' run defense looked great against the Bengals at times, but that's going to have to continue. And that's one area where I really do worry a little bit about the Patriots' depth, because after Devon Godshaw, they don't really have a traditional nose tackle on their roster. Daniel Aquale has much more experience on third downs, rushing the passer, than he is on early downs. Then you have guys like Jeremiah Farms, Eric Johnson, who is inactive. Tristan Hill came up off the practice squad. He's more of an interior rusher. So they're going to have to continue to really be stout against the run to be able to stop the Seahawks.
Yeah, I thought that, while, as you mentioned, White had an outstanding game, and I'm not surprised he's beginning to break out. He's, to me, the reason why Matthew Judon became expendable beyond whatever, off-field issues he might have had with his contract. And I thought Uche was close in some instances. There's got to be more Dietrich Wise. And I'm going to have to go back and look at who he was situated against, because my thought is that they did a really good job schematic of moving White around to put him in a matchup that he could win utilizing his talents.
Yeah, they did do a good job of that. He was, there's few players in the NFL like Keon White who are 6'5", 285, 290 pounds, who can stand up at outside linebacker, rush from the interior, line up in the nose, do all the things that he can do. And one thing is that, even after week 1, where he has 2.5 sacks, I think that more attention might be drawn Keon White's way. And maybe that will help free up guys like Joshua Uche and Dietrich Wise and these other pass rushers on the Patriots to be a little bit more productive, because I think that that's what allowed Uche to be so good when he was lined up across from Matthew Judon, is that he was able to clean up on a lot of those sacks when Judon was drawing more attention. And maybe we start to see that a little bit more, with Keon White now. And I think that the Seahawks offensive line overall is something that can be, the Patriots could, that could be an advantage for the Patriots. They've got a good left tackle in Charles Kraft. He had a great week 1, but beyond that, they don't have maybe the greatest talent yet at that position or that unit.
All right, so, Doug, I want you, before we wrap it up here, I want you to kind of complete this sentence, all right, for a second here. To go 2-0, the Patriots will need whom to step up this week?
I actually think it might be Jacoby Brissett, because after seeing week 1, the Seahawks are definitely going to be loading the box up against the Patriots. After hearing Gerard Mayo's comments on Monday and even today saying, we are going to be a run-first team. We are going to run the ball, and you're going to have to stop us. Otherwise, we're going to keep running the ball. I think the Seahawks are going to look at that as a challenge. I think that it will be loading the box. And I think the Patriots will need to rely a little bit more heavily on Jacoby Brissett. And John Mayo praised the Patriots wide receivers today, saying that they were doing the dirty work. They were getting open. To watch the film, they were getting open out there. And, Jalen Polk was someone who was definitely getting open. So I think that Patriots are definitely going to have to rely more heavily on Brissett, which means potentially bigger performances from guys like Demario Douglas and Jalen Polk in this game.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you put out a story in the Herald today on Jalen Polk that even though he didn't really wow you with the numbers last week, he certainly got open on a lot of occasions, and the Patriots either had a different play call or just didn't recognize it or what. But that's something I don't think that they can afford to do this week and expect to win the game.
No, definitely not. And he was open downfield, too, and he was a guy who could get separation at the University of Washington. He was a great contested catch guy. So I think that, overall as the season progresses, they are going to have more trust in Jalen Polk, and he's a guy who could be a major playmaker.
All right. Doug, thank you for the time, brother. It's good to talk to you again.
Absolutely. Good to talk to you too, John.
Thanks. You got it. That's the one and only Doug Kyed at Doug, Kyed. Kyed is where he is on Twitter. For those that don't know, I'm very proud of Doug Kyed because Doug is a former student of mine at Emerson College in Boston. In fact, the Bruins beat writer for the Globe is also a former student of mine in Matt Porter. So I'm proud of my guys. And I have 2 TV guys in Providence who are former students. They're kind of sprinkling all over the country now, which is nuts, huh? What'd you say?
Who are the TV guys?
Nick Coit and Ian.
That's what I was thinking. I didn't know Coit was one of your guys.
Nick Coit.
I should have known.
At WLNE, Channel 6, the ABC station in Providence, and his weekend guy, Ian Steele. They were a couple of years apart, I think. Nick being the older. I'll get that one in for him, and I'm sure I'll hear about it. But, and so, hey, the fact that we could keep, local students and have them matriculate quickly and work back this way says something. In fact, as I recall, I wish I still had Doug on the line here. I asked him about it. When Doug was in my class, he wasn't even a sports comm major, I don't believe. I think he was something else, and he just wanted to take this class just because he thought it would be fun. And now look at him. Holy crap, right?
That's some call me now for your free reading stuff.
Call me now for your free reading. I like it. I totally
Call me
like
now
it.
for your free reading.
Absolutely. Hey, looking to kick off your season with some epic game day watch parties? Become a championship host with Bob's Discount Furniture's Fall Dining Lookbook. Lookbook? Shop party-ready styles perfect for any home, whether you're looking for small space friendly sets, seating options that will keep you comfy during overtime, or extendable sets ideal for hosting a full lineup of friends. You can even choose from multiple heights, shapes, and colors to match your game day vibe. So stop in and see how much you can save when you dare to compare with Bob's Discount Furniture, the official furniture store of the New England Patriots. 855-PATS 500, the toll-free number, web radio at patriots.com. I'll read a couple of emails coming up at JR Broadcaster on Twitter. Let me get back to the phones here, and I want to thank Todd in North Carolina for hanging on. Todd, you there, brother?
I'm still here. Haven't talked to you in a while there, John.
I'm glad you took the time. I lost you on the show last week, and we couldn't find you again.
There was an incident at my son's school, so I just said, you know what? I'm just going to duck out here and deal with that.
Okay.
I can tell you off air what happened.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. All right. I'll get filled in on the details. I hope everybody's okay.
I got my boy. That's all that matters.
Okay. That's all that matters. All right. Tell me what's on your mind, man.
I really liked the way they played the other day, but I think we all know that's not sustainable.
Yeah.
I think they played their heart out. I was a little bit impressed with Jacoby, especially towards the end and some of the decision-making he made. He made some passes towards the end of the game that were very, I think, key to them actually winning the game. But again, I don't think it's sustainable with the line play, and if somebody shuts down the run, I'm not sure exactly how well we'll be able to protect. So I noticed they were bringing in an extra guy. What would you do to try to keep them on time with respect to their passing game, John, and keep it going?
Well, you mean like get it going to begin with, really?
Yeah, get it going. Like, how are you going to get it?
I'm finding Pop Douglas. I'm going to try to get him to create with the ball. That's what I want. I mean, he's a guy that's supposed to be a slot receiver. He's supposed to have a unique talent. He can catch the ball. He's quick. He makes people miss. I want to try to scheme Pop Douglas to get open. That being said, I think Jalen Polk is the one guy that you can somewhat rely upon to beat his defender, and get open deep. I don't know if he's a true stretch the field kind of guy. We can find out pretty quick. But if he's as open as much as everybody says he was, and I only looked at a little bit of tape after the game, so I'll take the guys who know it because this is what they do for a living. They study it. I'll take their word for it. He was open a lot, and I want to see them get downfield, and they're going to have to do that to one or both of those guys in order to win this game on Sunday.
So you're not looking at any kind of trickery, lots of screen.
No, I don't think this is
a flea flicker or two.
No, Todd, I don't think this is a trickeration team. I really don't. I don't get the impression they are. I think that, while they may have some of that in the arsenal, I think right now they're worried about the meat and potatoes. I think right now this team, because Gerard Mayo is head coaching, he learned at the feet of the master, and maybe the master kind of lost touch with his subjects, over the last couple of years. But I think
I hear you.
I think Gerard buys into it because it's what he knows. It's how he learned how to coach. He didn't forget; he learned, and I think he found guys that would agree with some of that philosophy in what he has with his coordinators in AVP and with Covington. So. I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to say they'll never run a flicker. I'm going to say they're never going to run an end around. In fact, I'd love to see them do it because I think Pop Douglas, if you can find the right situation, he'd be the perfect guy to run something like that. But I just don't think that that's going to be the rule rather than the exception in order to get guys open and score with the ball. You're going to have to win going over the top. You're going to have to win like every other good team in the NFL wins, and that is to find, a quarterback that can give you 60 to 65% completions. That's to find a quarterback that can give you 200 to 250 yards passing on a consistent basis. That's to find a quarterback that can give you at least a 2-to-1 ratio in touchdowns to interceptions thrown. and manage the game. And that's what really is upon Jacoby Brissett. Did you know, Todd, that this week NFL quarterbacks, 1 to 32, of all the 32 quarterbacks that started and played, averaged under 200 yards passing in week 1, and that hasn't happened in 2 decades.
Yeah, well, my fear is that the line just can't meet the requirements that you're outlining. I'm not even sure about Jacoby that much. You know, he's not a bad quarterback. He's functional, but our O-line, if our O-line can't give him enough time, then we're going to have to be, shifting pockets, doing something to try to buy the time. Because if you're going to stretch the field, like you said, John, and the indications were last game, they were bringing in a 6th lineman to try to keep him clean. I just don't know.
And
that's
frankly,
my concern, John.
Go ahead.
No, that's my concern. I just
okay.
see how they can do a long passing game like that.
Well, I thought bringing in Wallace like that I thought was brilliant, because he ended up becoming a tackle eligible, at tight end. So I actually, listen, whatever you got to do to win a game is what you got to do. This is all about going week to week, moment to moment, game to game, win that game, then move on and worry about the next one. And that's what, we always try to look big picture around here because we always want to be able to what? Predict the future. We want to know how this team is going to be in another month or two, and is it, actually, contention worthy and all that stuff. And I think we
damn it, John, I missed you.
I know.
I really missed you.
I know.
You got to get back to it at least twice a week, my friend.
I know.
I miss this kind of heart, this kind of insight combined, saying, "Hey, this is where we're at. This is what we can do. Let's just figure out a way, and this is what we'll to achieve." And we're not getting that from the PU crew. We're getting, I don't know, a little bit of dribble of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of ha ha hoo hoo. And, you and Evan are the only ones right now keeping it real. So,
well, I appreciate you saying that, but there are some of us that got to make money.
Yes. I would like you to make money too, John.
Thank you.
That would be good.
Thank you. How about this? How about I make so much money I can afford to retire on my full-time job, and I'll do nothing but come and talk football?
Damn it. If I win the lottery, John, go on. You got it?
Put me down.
Me right now.
Dude.
Write it down somewhere.
Okay. All right.
Done.
You win the lottery.
It's verbally archived.
Okay. All right. Verbally archived. Matt has a record of it now. I need $1 million. And
Excellent.
if you're going to bring me you send me $1 million, I will do nothing but appear on Patriots Playbook and go to the stadium. How's that?
Sold. Done, John.
Okay.
Absolutely done. Have a good one, man.
Thank you, brother. It's good to talk to you, Todd. Be careful out there. So what happened with this kid? Is it something you can share on the air? No? Okay, that's probably good then. All right, so we'll save it for another day. Nelson's in L.A. Hey, Nelson, you're in the playbook. Nelson going once. Nelson going twice. Sold. Okay. Russell Baxter will join us here in approximately 5 minutes. I mentioned the veterans candidates for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and like 183 nominees overall, which is an extraordinary number. The Pro Football Hall of Fame, and I mentioned this earlier when I was talking about it with Chris, in the last hour, is going to narrow this down to a list of 50. So, as I said, 183 in the senior category for the class of 2025. To be considered in this particular group, each former player has to have appeared in a professional football game in at least in this group. Each former player last could have appeared in a professional football game in 1999. We don't have any issues with that, where any of the Patriots have experienced, because they were well before 1999. 100 offensive players, 77 defensive players, 5 special teamers. And the seniors screening committee, this is something that, frankly, we need to do for the Patriots Hall of Fame. They have the old fogies, like myself and a few others, that have been around really for 30-plus years. I mean, the team's life is what now? This is 1960. This is 2024. So we're at 65 years, right? New England Patriots are 65 years old. There are a handful of us that have covered the team actively now for more than half of the life of the franchise. There are some guys that go before me, but they're already retired. They're smart. They saved their dollars and they got out when the getting was good. Guys like Ron Hobson and Jim Donaldson and people like that come to mind. Kevin Mannix, guys like that. But I would tell you that we really need to set up a senior screening committee for the Patriots Hall of Fame. There are some guys that I think are very deserving within the New England realm of the New England Patriots Hall of Fame. And the guy that I've kind of touted over the last few years has been a guy like Mosi Tutupu, who was a do-it-all, Mr. Patriot kind of guy that really, I think, deserves that kind of attention. And he was certainly a fan favorite, and I don't think anybody would have problems with that pick. The problem is that we're only letting in one candidate per year, which is okay. I'm all right with that because you don't want to put too many in all at once, and then all of a sudden you're bereft of quality candidates. I think there are guys like Logan Mankins who are going to get in, and when they're eligible, Julian Edelman's going to get in, and we know we already broke the rules for, Tom Brady getting in this summer, and rightfully so. But I'm just, there also should be a senior screening committee, and I think there is, because we haven't met with the overall Hall of Fame committee in over a year now, because Tom was the fait accompli for this year. So forgive me if that I've misspoken. I'm just not aware of it. I'd like to be on it because I think there are a lot of guys that need to be talked about. But as far as the Pro Football Hall of Fame is concerned, I'm also kind of curious as to why Jim Plunkett isn't in. Forget Gino Cappelletti. And, of course, let's not forget Gino Cappelletti. He deserves it. As the all-time leading scorer in AFL football history, he deserves to be there. But why is Jim Plunkett not in the Hall of Fame? Is it because I don't know? I'll ask Russell that in a few minutes. But to me, that's one. And then a guy like Mark Van Eegen, who was, wasn't a fancy guy. He was a meat and potatoes, straight ahead kind of runner, tough as nails. He was a hybrid. He was a fullback tailback, if there is such a thing. And he played with those, Raider teams that had Fred Biletnikoff and Phil Villapiano, who, by the way, Villapiano's on this senior screening list too. Biletnikoff's already there in the Hall of Fame, and deservedly so. John Madden, he was on those Madden teams that were, the Miller Lite All-Stars on those old commercials back in the 1970s and 80s. And so he's a guy that ended his career with the Patriots. I would also tell you that I think a guy like Steve Grogan could probably get some play on this. I was watching an old Monday Night Football highlight this week. Someone tweeted it out. And I guess it's because of the anniversary, the 45th anniversary, 45th anniversary of Monday Night Football was this past week. 45 years Monday Night Football. So they're showing an old Howard Cosell halftime highlight clip. And you know who he went nuts over? Mighty Mac Herron of the New England Patriots. And I'm just I was so into it. I had goosebumps on the back of my neck listening to his narration, his video highlights. If you can come up with that on Twitter, do yourself a favor and go look at that. Because he had, believe it or not, the secret about Howard is that he always had to have, that you think he always had to have things handed to him, the producers had to make sure they did everything for him. Howard did everything off the top of that bald noggin. He was impressive, and I think that's what made Howard Cosell remarkable. Absolutely remarkable.
You could see the sheets on the tables in the TV booth if you look it down on when the cameras are on the announcers. You can see the piles of papers they have in front of them. That's astonishing.
The funny thing about it is, and I'm glad you mentioned that because, there are papers and sheets all over the place and, charts and figures and stats and most of it handwritten, not computerized or not typed out, because we didn't have computers back then, remember, right? And then there was a shot of the booth during the Sunday night game where Mike Tirico and Chris Collinsworth were saying, hey, the camera behind us is on, and so you could see the lay of the land in front of Mike and Chris. It's all computer monitors. I'm like, where the hell's the paper? Where's his spot charts?
Scroll with your finger on the iPad. That's it.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. It was amazing to see that, especially in light of the fact that the clip that I showed you of Howard Cosell, or I told you about, of Howard Cosell narrating off the top of his head. He had a producer in one ear telling him what was coming and the name of the player and everything, where they had a shot sheet that they would give him, and he'd look at that. There's no script. It's just like, Mac Heron, touchdown. And he's going to his right, and he's heading into the end zone. I mean, it was just like, wow. Wow, the ability to ad-lib was extraordinary. That's kind of part of what made Howard. Is Nelson in L.A. back? Is he back there again? All right, let me squeeze him in here real quick. Hey, Nelson, what's up, buddy?
Hey, how we doing today, man?
It's all good. What's on your mind?
Man, I'm just trying to get that W again. I'm going for 21-10. Again, run that W again.
21-10. So you like the way the defense is playing then, huh?
Yeah, I loved it.
Okay, good. Who stood out to you? Whose play impressed you on Sunday?
Jones.
Okay.
Stevenson.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Even the quarterback impressed me. I thought he was going to fuck up. Excuse my language.
Well, okay, no. Well, it's the internet. It happens. What's going on? But what's going?
I'm bad about that.
No worries. What's going on behind you? I hear some saws.
Oh yeah, we're right here. We're digging a trench. We're about to put some pipes under the ground. The oil field.
Okay. All right. Well, stay safe out there. You're not anywhere near the fires in California, are you?
Oh no, sir. They're not near me. I'm in Bakersfield right now.
Okay. All right. That's good. I got you. All right, Nelson. What else? You got anything else?
Oh, let's go Patriots all the way, baby boy.
All right. You got it.
Should we be concerned that construction's being done while they're on hold with you?
If you're in Bakersfield, get the hell out. Oh, goodness. Well, Nelson calls with a prediction just about every week, so I give him this. He's certainly dedicated.
A real woman could stop you from drinking.
It has to be a real big woman.
It's time to go around the NFL with football guru Russell Baxter.
From now on, your name is Flounder.
On Patriots Playbook.
Flounder.
Mr. Baxter, I presume. How are you today, sir?
I'm good. I'm all over Nelson.
Yeah.
I thought he made good points, and after all, as we know, Nelson, games are won in the trenches.
Yes, they are. They're one in the trenches. Attaboy. If anybody can come up with an analogy to digging trenches in Bakersfield, California, you can, Russ. So
there you go.
I like it.
And I also like Nelson's 21-10 pick.
Okay.
And given what happened to the Seahawks last week, even though they won, I'm predicting that the Patriots gets, let's see, how many safeties could they get?
Can they get 3?
I'm going to give them 10 safeties in the Canadian Football League Rouge.
Yeah, you know what? Why doesn't the NFL take that hint from the CFL and create the Rouge? Because you got so many kickers that have heavy legs in the league now. Why can't kickers score more than just a field goal or an extra point? If they can kick that ball through the end of the end zone, to get a point, what the hell? Why not?
Well, listen, I think they've done enough tweaking, and to me, still, one of the most exciting plays, obviously in college and pro, is watching somebody miss that field goal and then they going back.
Running it out. Yeah, running back.
We saw Devin Hester do it as a rookie.
But why couldn't you put somebody back there, Russell? Let's say, you're going to kick it off. Why couldn't you put somebody back there deep in the end zone if someone tries to boot it through the end zone and maybe try to bat it down to keep somebody from scoring a Rouge? Wouldn't that be like a block shot in basketball?
Listen, if you say it enough and it gets out there, the NFL listens. That's one thing, okay? They talk about football being a copycat thing. I think the NFL does a lot of copycatting, and it's mostly done with fan pressure, okay? Brett Favre didn't get the ball in overtime in the 2009 NFC title game at New Orleans. Of course, he had the ball in regulation. He decided to give it to the Saints, but let's not let facts get in the way.
Okay.
So we start tweaking the overtime rule. We tweaked the Pro Bowl. We We've now tweaked the kickoff. Okay, they might have to change the name of football if they take anything else out. So we'll see. I also like your discussion about the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Yeah, good. I'm glad because I was going there next. Yeah.
And I'm going to give you my reason why I don't think Jim Plunkett is in.
Good.
And I think it's because when you look at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, it's really a career award. And listen, he had his struggles in New England. He went to San Francisco, and that didn't turn out so well. And then he was rejuvenated in Oakland. / Los Angeles, you know, the wild card. To me, he's almost like a Hall of Fame story. He's one of my favorite stories because what he did in Oakland in 1980 is he wasn't the starting quarterback at the beginning of the year.
Right.
Okay? The Raiders and Oilers made a significant trade in which Dan Pastorini went to Oakland and Ken Stabler went to Houston.
Yeah.
Because Bum Phillips wanted to knock the door down.
Yeah.
In Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And as it turned out that year, oddity of oddities, the Steelers did not even make the playoffs this year. They got very old very fast. Dan Pastorini broke his leg in week 5, and Jim Plunkett went the rest of the way, and obviously they won the Super Bowl, technically the first wild card to win the Super Bowl. As I like to point out, in 1969, the Kansas City Chiefs were actually the first non-division winner to win the Super Bowl because they did not win the division in the AFL and had to play the Raiders, who they had lost to twice during the regular season, and then beat them and then beat the Vikings. So I always phrase it as non-division winners, but technically the Raiders were the first wild card because that's how the playoffs were then set up. Starting in 1970, and obviously they've expanded and so on. But I think that's probably what hurts Plunkett a little. Now, I will also say this. I was personally surprised that Kurt Warner got in because I thought he fell under the same category. Okay? And great story. Wound up with the Rams. Began his career in training camp in 1994 with the Green Bay Packers. People then bounced around and
the Iowa Barnstormers of the AFL, of the Arena League.
Bagging groceries and all that, and then wound up with the Rams. And then had a not-so-successful stint with the New York Giants, and then bounced back, and obviously was part of the Cardinal team that went to the Super Bowl in Super Bowl 43. So, and yet he wound up in the Hall of Fame. So we shall see. I mean, to me, the thing that goes on with the senior players now, and I'm very, very happy that we now have 3 senior finalists every year instead of 1 senior finalist, because we have such a backlog when it comes to the older players. I mean, the really older players who meant a lot to this league in the 20s and the 30s and the 40s. I like to remind people, the Hall of Fame opened in 1963. The NFL first took, and it's not, here's my ultimate reminder. It's the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It's not run by the NFL. So I always get those conspiracies. Well, Roger Goodell doesn't want the Raider, but please stop it, okay? It's not how it works. It's a separate entity.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is the NFL was born in 1920. The Pro Football Hall of Fame class was first 1963. That's 43 years of a gap. So they've been playing catch up forever.
Yeah, and which is why I'm glad they've developed the senior screening committee.
Right.
But there are some. I mean, there's the most egregious omission here. Plunkett, I think, is worthy enough. I think he's worthy enough just because of his story, as you suggested, and over his career. But the guy that's the most egregious omission is Gino Cappelletti, because he led the AFL career in scoring.
No, I would definitely not disagree with that at all. I always do an omissions piece. My guy who I put first as the biggest omission, and I do 30. I could probably do 100 before somebody dozes off and so on. But I put L.C. Greenwood from the Pittsburgh Steelers dynasty.
Yeah.
And now, thanks to guys like John Turney and Pro Football Reference, who went back and did the homework, and now we can see, and they did it, from records and media guides, we now have sack totals going back to 1960 instead of just 1982.
Mm-hmm.
And you go back and you look at, according to the NFL, the official NFL, Deacon Jones never had a sack because he played well before 1980.
They kept that as a stat. Yeah, that's right.
Now we know that better and stuff. And I'll tell you something. John Turney, who does a lot of writing for Clark Judge on his Hall of Fame site and so on. You can follow him on Twitter as well. He'd be a great person to come on your show one day and just talk about the history of defensive linemen and so on.
I love it.
It's a shameless plug. Terrific guy. I've met him at ESPN at least once or twice when I was there and so on. And he's a wealth of knowledge, and he really orchestrated getting this information about sacks and career sacks and so on. So LC, I do a piece. We didn't update this year. I think we're going to update it because once a couple guys got in, now on my list I had Randy Gradishar and Devin Hester, and they're now in. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So now I have to go back, and we'll see what happens this year, and I'll probably update it after the class of 2025 gets in.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, we have the modern guys, and we'll see who some of the older guys. Now, I can tell you guys who have gotten a lot of consideration in the last couple of years are guys like Ken Anderson, are guys like Sterling Sharp.
Yep.
And boy, would that be a ceremony.
Yeah, sure.
If you remember Shannon Sharp's induction.
Yeah.
And what he said about his brother.
Yeah.
There wasn't and I was there. There wasn't a dry eye in the house.
Yeah, Sterling is on the list of the Veterans Committee. Sure. Yeah.
Well, Shannon got up there and said, of all the people in the Hall of Fame, I can honestly say this: I'm the second best football player in my entire family.
That's cool. Yeah, that's a nice thing to say.
With his brother sitting 50 feet away on the stage. And I've known Sterling for a long time. We worked together at ESPN and so on. And I know that meant the world to him and so on. But Ken Anderson's another guy who the numbers don't do him justice, but he was a very successful, efficient quarterback in the 1970s.
Mm-hmm.
League MVP in 1981 when the Bengals went to their first Super Bowl. And again, I have so much fun doing this. There's so many older guys and somewhat modern guys who are not in. And, I already looking forward to updating the piece once we see
absolutely
some of the senior members and so on again. And I'll just throw out one modern guy who is first time eligible. And we don't have a lot of kickers in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. But I think it would be a swing and a miss if Adam Vinatieri is not in.
Yeah, he deserves to be there. He's had some of the biggest kicks in league history. So, yeah, he definitely...
All he's done, John, not much. All he's done is he has the most field goals in NFL history. He has the most points in NFL history. He has the most points in NFL postseason history.
Mm-hmm.
And he has the most field goals in NFL postseason history. I don't know. I think he's marginal.
Marginal in whose eyes, right?
Yeah.
By the way, I looked at this list of 182 names is officially on it. There's another expatriate on it, Stanley Morgan.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you get Bob Heidelberg on the air.
Yeah, I know.
Much he'll talk about Stanley Morgan. There's just so many. George Coons, Bob Kuchenberg is another guy who is, often talked about. So on, so many, and if you notice the list, if you're just going by, they combine wide receivers and tight ends.
Yes, they did.
And they combine safeties and cornerbacks. But look at all those offensive linemen that are on that list.
Oh, there's some unbelievable names. And you mentioned the defensive lineman earlier. How about Lyle Alzado, George Andre, who I remember, Bubba Baker, Ben Davidson, Mark Gastineau. You mentioned L.C. Greenwood, Rosie Greer, Too Tall Jones. My goodness. Leonard Marshall, Harvey Martin. Good. This is nuts.
Yeah, this is the fun part about football. This really is. And I don't know the last time you were in Canton, John. It is, it's something that I don't miss. I just don't miss it. And I've been going, the first year I went was 1989. The ceremony was still on the steps. It was Art Shell, Willie Wood, Terry Bradshaw, and Mel Blount.
Mm-hmm.
And then they played the Hall of Fame game at 2:30 in the afternoon. Now the stadium is renewed. There's a hotel there. It's bigger than life.
Yeah.
And it's such a joy to go there. And you go to that jacket ceremony on Friday night when they bring back like 100 Hall of Famers who come back, and the guys get to walk the gauntlet and so on. Although the one thing that always strikes me when I see that, and not to be maudlin or anything like that, is watching some of the older players not kind of struggle to get up those steps now.
Yeah,
on that stage.
I know. That's
and it's hard. And it's hard. Some of them who don't come up at all.
It pains me literally and figuratively when I see Earl Campbell.
Yes.
And how much he struggles to get around, and some of these other players. And obviously, I don't know who couldn't have been touched by Steve McMichael's induction this year. I mean, which was one of the most emotional things I've ever seen in something that, can be rather, mundane and even sometimes boring, a ceremony. That wasn't boring at all. That was riveting. And I was very happy that I watched it, because something like that had never happened before, holding the actual induction remotely like that, because he's physically unable to attend, and to see his teammates, around him like that, from the Bears 85 team in particular, that was very touching and very satisfying as a fan of football to see something like that happen.
The thing that always strikes me about the Hall of Fame, and some of the stories and some of these speeches are just amazing. I remember Curtis Martin talking about his mother and so on. I remember Bryant Young, who lost a son years ago, and which I really didn't know the story. And to hear him speak, I think that was last year, as a matter of fact. That's the Hall of Fame is such an honor for these gentlemen, but it's really a reward to their families.
Yeah, of course it is.
Because of what they gave up. And every year you hear those players acknowledge their significant others,
their families,
their children, their parents, and so on. That's what's important. They know what they sacrificed as a father or a brother or a son or anything, so they could live their dream. And they always come back, and it always comes back to that. And it's just wonderful to watch.
Yep.
It really is. I highly recommend, and this is just my own personal, but I highly recommend it. If you're one of your favorite players or one of your teams is being represented, get to Canton for Friday and Saturday, even if you don't go to the game. I mean, the game is the game.
Yeah.
Okay?
Well,
it's all about that jacket ceremony, and it's all about those induction ceremonies. And bring the Kleenex. I'm just telling you right now.
I have a feeling that in the next couple of years, when, two guys named Belichick and Brady are ready to roll, there'll be plenty of Patriots fans and plenty of New England representation there.
Yeah, and the Patriots will probably play in that game.
Likely.
Yeah, because that's another thing the NFL does. I'm sorry, the Pro Football Hall of Fame does now, in conjunction with the NFL. It used to be they had a schedule, John, of the Hall of Fame games going like 20 years.
Wow.
And now they've abandoned that, and they coincide with who's going into
the Hall
of Fame.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had Devin Hester, you had Steve McMichael, and you had Andre Johnson, which is why they had
the Bears
Texans in that game. And by the way, I'm really looking forward to Bears Texans Sunday night, because they didn't get to finish that Hall of Fame game.
No.
Because of the weather.
Right.
I really want to see how this turns out, if you know what I mean.
Are they going to pick it up from where they left off?
Yeah.
Hey, Thursday night, man, Bills Dolphins, great AFC East battle. Miami, had its own off-field issues last week and managed to overcome them. Buffalo came from behind to win their game, and Josh Allen got himself banged up a little bit. But to me, that's going to have my attention certainly here in week 2.
Well, I don't think they had off-the-field issues. I think they had on-the-road issues.
On-the-road issues, yeah. Traffic issues, yeah.
And not from Willie Nelson, by the way.
No, that's true.
This has been a house of horrors, regardless of where they played for the Miami Dolphins. Okay? Even before Josh Allen got there in 2018. John, since Sean McDermott was hired in 2017, the Miami Dolphins, including the playoffs, are 2-13 versus the Bills.
Wow.
Okay, and they've lost their share of games to them at home. If you remember at the end of the year last year,
sure,
Miami had a chance to still win the division, which they have not won the AFC East since 2008.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, when Tom Brady went down with his knee injury, right.
Right. The Patriots won 11 in a row, and the Bills have won the last 4. And this is their albatross, and they have to find a way. And they're a little banged up at running back. Raheem Mostert is not going to play tomorrow night. Egg Chain is a game-time decision.
Wow.
One of the reasons they were able to rally and beat Jacksonville last week is they actually ran the ball in the fourth quarter after really not running it the first 3 quarters. So this is a statement game, even though it's week 2. They need to hold serve at Miami if they have any plans of winning the AFC East, which is, like I said, has eluded them for 16 years, or I should say 15 seasons. So we shall see. I was impressed with Miami's defense, Henry. I was impressed with Buffalo's running game. You know, both of these teams fell way behind last week at home and had to come back and rally. Now they're on a short week, so it's going to be an interesting game. But listen, I don't want to bury the lead. How many people on this earth had the Patriots going into Cincinnati last week and winning that football game?
One, and he's a listener to this program. Patty in Agawam, I'm going to give him full credit on that one. He picked the Patriots to win. That was it.
Well,
the only person I heard all last week.
Right. Well, I will just say this. For certain members of the media who shall remain nameless, who continue to stress that this is an offensive league and it's all about the quarterback, and if you have a defensive head coach, you're doomed. Because, of course, you know this, John. Every defensive head coach in the NFL coaches the exact same way. Okay?
Yeah.
I mean, we all know that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know what never changes about the game of football? Physicality.
No, right.
And New England took it to the Bengals last week, physically, on both sides of the ball. And, it's funny because there is a defensive coach in New England now, and they won last week, correct?
Yes.
There's a defensive coach in Seattle, and they won last week.
Yes. 2 youngest coaches in the NFL going at each other this week.
Yeah, there's a defensive coach in Chicago, and even though their offense didn't score a touchdown, they won last week, right? There's a defensive coach in Pittsburgh. They didn't even score a touchdown, and they won last week.
Yeah.
So I guess the people who are charting the offensive coaches, I guess some of these guys need to get fired. Is that the?
I don't know. Either that, or they're just emphasizing defense early in the year.
Well, the beauty of football, and as you well know, is there are so many ways to win a game. Okay.
Defense and special teams won it last week.
Right. You don't have to have your quarterback throw for 300 yards. Listen, all offensive coaches had the same philosophy. Every game would be 50-50 in a tie.
Yes, yeah.
The beauty of this league, and it's the beauty of this game. And I actually heard Julian Edelman do an interview this week and so on, and talking about Gerard Mayo and the philosophy of the Patriots, which really not that far gone from Bill Belichick, just upgraded a little. And he also said the same thing about Mike McDonald in Seattle, okay, who took over for Pete Carroll, kind of the same game plan for the most part, but just upgraded a little. So, again, that's what I love about football. There are so many different ways to win, okay? I mean, the Packers scored 29 points last week and couldn't win. The Colts scored 27 and couldn't win.
Right.
Okay? The Steelers kicked 6 field goals and won a road game. Okay? So go ahead and keep, it's not a one-trick pony. It's 32 staffs who find different ways to take advantage of their talent.
True.
And, I look at Kansas City last week, who, let's be honest, last year they really won that more on defense than they did on offense. Okay? They had the second most sacks. They gave up the second fewest points. Steve Spagnuolo did a hell of a job. But then I watched them Thursday night. I know they won. But, John, they gave up 452 yards of total offense to the Ravens. I don't know if they get away with that all year. I'm sure they will adjust.
Nope.
But as you also know, week 1 can be fool's gold.
Yes, it can. It can. That's why, I think week 1's fun, but I don't really put a lot of stock in it because we don't know what kind of a team anybody has until you're through at least a month of the season. And I would tell you that you really don't know for certain until you're almost at the halfway point of the year.
Yeah. Well, because now, as we have talked about to a degree, and the way the preseason is run, which I'm not happy about, to be honest with you. I want to get to our 18 games, and I want to put more emphasis on the preseason because it will only be 2 games. You just don't hit the ground running anymore at all. Yeah. I mean, you have that final preseason week, and then there's a week and a half of downtime unless you're playing on Thursday night or you're playing Friday night in Brazil. Okay? So it was almost surprising that there was as many points as there were scored in both of those. They were 2 of the higher scoring games, the Chiefs-Ravens and the Packers-Eagles. But then again, maybe one of the reasons they were some of the higher scoring games is because their defenses didn't get a hell of a lot of work in the offseason.
Sure. Yeah. Gotcha. Russell, good to talk to you as always, brother. Week 1 in the books. Hopefully we'll learn a little bit more. I know one of the questions we talk about next week is which 0-2 team is most likely to be, a playoff team at the end of the year. I know we can jump in a lot of that stuff next week, but,
absolutely.
Yeah, and then and which 2-0 team is likely to miss out on the playoffs? And that might be one right here in New England. We don't even know that yet for sure.
That's right. Well, here's what I do know this week in New England. It's the 10-year anniversary of Super Bowl 49.
Wow, yeah.
So I'm going to look in the end and just by chance see if Malcolm Butler is hanging around.
I know. I can't believe that was 10 years ago. My goodness, I know. Have a good week, my friend. Enjoy the football on Sunday. Yes, sir. Talk to you soon. The one and only Russell Baxter at Bax Football Guru on Twitter. Let me grab a couple of emails here before we sign off. Chris, aloha from Hawaii, just listening to the broadcast. I heard you ask a question that I've been asking. Were the Patriots really the worst team in the league headed into week 1? Your guest did some and then really danced around the question. They weren't. I think most of the quote-unquote power rankings had them 31st out of 32 with the Carolina Panthers rated last, and I don't think Carolina did anything to improve their lot. But the Patriots, I think, in most polls jumped like 5 or 6 spots, if I'm not mistaken. He says the answer is straight up no. The reason is that the defense, in my opinion, is a top 10 defense. However, one ranks the Pats D, it has to be very high given the past performances going all the way back through last season. Points allowed are way below average, and given the pedigree with BB and now with Maye, there has to be some ranking there, worth there, which is overlooked. Now coupled the Pats' steadfast defense with opposing week 1 and 2 offenses, and there are likely wins to be had. All right. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate you, and appreciate your service. He's on a submarine out there in Hawaii. Howard in Stratford, Connecticut. Good to hear from you, Howard. He said, what an exciting game that was. Would have liked a few more points from the O, but I'll take the win. All-around team win. Very happy for Coach Maye and his staff. Love the aggressiveness that Coach Covington is bringing to the D, and as stated, would like more output from the passing game, but couldn't ask more from Ramondre. The line was a pleasant surprise. Hopefully they build off of that performance against Seattle. And as for Seattle, I think the Pats build off week 1, stuff the run, make Seattle beat them throwing the ball, which plays to the strength of the D. I'm not quite sure about that. I think the Seattle receivers will give the Patriots secondary a really solid test in that regard. He says the D remains stingy. Pats moved to 2-0, 23-13. That's Howard in Stratford, Connecticut. And Aiden in California. John, just call me now for your free reading.
Call me now for your free reading.
I know you were doing something else, right? Trying to cue up other things. He said, I was right about my prediction for the win, but not the score. Oh, that's 2. I got to give Aiden in California credit then. It was Patty in Agawam and Aiden in California. Yes, they both picked the Patriots over the Bengals last week. So I got to give you credit, Aiden. Sorry about that. He said, nevertheless, a good, solid win. Most importantly, they can build on it. So what's the focus Wednesday? Well, taking from a former theme of this program, right? We build on the offense, start opening it up more. And, John, I'm saying we win again, 24-20. I'm going to trust the process. Thank you. And thank you, Aiden. I appreciate your taking the time. All right? Very good. Is there one more here? Oh, yes. This one comes from Riley, who says, I'm wondering what you think of this. Polk was able to get great separation all day, close to 50% of the time. Pop is going to be a reliable target all year. I liked what I saw from the tight ends. Mondre looks fantastic. The line run blocked well. Pass protection is a work in progress. I think this game made me more comfortable with the idea of playing Drake sooner rather than later. I don't know if that makes sense. Why would you play him sooner if things are going well now? I'm not sure, especially with the lack of production throwing the ball. Does week 5 sound more realistic after Sunday? Right now, I would say week none. But then again, I know that that's not going to happen either. And again, I'm not trying to take away from Drake. Evan Lazard told us earlier in the show, if you joined us late, he managed to have a private conversation, an exclusive interview with Drake Maye about his first week learning under Jacoby in the regular season, and that'll appear here on the website coming up in the next day or so. Our thanks to Evan, our thanks to Russell Baxter, our thanks to Doug Kyde from the Boston Herald, and to Chris Price from the Boston Globe for joining us. Thanks to the Marine. Hoorah. Appreciate you. He's going to put out, by the way, those opens for us, right? You're going to put those out on Twitter, all right? QY2289, is that your Twitter handle? So we'll find them there, and I'll retweet them on JR Broadcaster on Twitter, so that way you can vote for your 2 favorites, and then we'll debut the winner next week. Same Pat's time, same Pat's channel, next Wednesday, 2:30 Eastern Time on Patriots Playbook.
Thank you for downloading this podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Google Play, and everywhere else you listen. Like the show? Please rate and review us. Listener comments and ratings help keep us high in the podcast rankings so new listeners can find us. Be sure to check patriots.com for more news and more podcasts.